The movie begins with the infamous Puss in Boots narrating the story of a shooting star that fell from the sky and landed somewhere unknown. According to legend, within the star is a single wish waiting to be granted to someone worthy. At present, Puss in Boots, who happens to be a very renowned hero and outlaw, is throwing a party in the town of Del Mar. Everyone there adores him and is looking forward to his show. Puss is very adventurous and loves doing all sorts of dangerous stunts. He simply revels in his status as a living legend. To prove this point even further, he throws his party at the governor of Del Mar's mansion. There, he entertains the crowd by singing a song about what a great hero he is. When the governor arrives, Puss attempts to flee. However, the governor orders his bodyguards to deliver Puss's head to them. Despite having numerous said soldiers after him, Puss in Boots manages to outwit the governor and his bodyguards. Puss also rips the governor's portrait apart. This angers the governor, but he can't seem to do anything about it. Puss soon awakens the sleeping giant of Del Mar after setting off some noisy fireworks. As the one-eyed giant attempts to destroy the town, he engages in an epic battle. Puss quickly employs his cunning mind to confuse the giant and wrap a bell around its horns, which essentially knocks the beast out. The epic fight leaves all the townspeople in awe, and so they start celebrating his victory. Puss smirks at his wit, but that's when the giant bell falls and crushes him. After some time, Puss awakens in the town doctor's office. There, the doctor informs Puss that he was eliminated by the bell, but Puss seems to be unconcerned about it. This is because cats have 9 lives. Just then, the doctor makes Puss remember all the other times he's died before. Surprisingly, there are a lot of circumstances where Puss has lost his life. Some of them include getting trampled in a bullfight, mauled by hunter dogs during a bad poker game, and falling off a ledge while drunk. Not only that, he had also got burned while making cookies, launched out of a cannon, crushed by a large weight, and had an allergic reaction to shellfish. It turns out that Puss has already died 8 times. He's run out of lives now. Unfortunately, this means Puss is on his final journey. Seeing that Puss is at eternal risk now, the doctor advises him to give up his life of adventure and his dream of becoming a legend. He further cautions Puss that continuing on his quest for glory and adventure will result in his 9th passing, one from which he will not be able to come back. Despite hearing all this, the adventurous cat is certain he has nothing to be concerned about. He proclaims himself to be the great and fearless Puss in Boots whom no one can ever defeat. He also claims that passing away means nothing to him. However, the doctor does not believe him. Out of concern, he assigns Puss to a lady known as Mama Luna. This enraged Puss, and so he storms out of the office, but not before grabbing a few treats. He then goes to a local pub where he proceeds to complain to the bartender about the doctor. That's when he requests the heaviest cream. The bartender agrees and goes to the back to retrieve it. Just then, Puss hears someone whistling, and he is confronted by a massive yet deadly wolf. The wolf initially appears to be a fan of Puss. However, Puss is aware that the wolf is a bounty hunter. He pulls out his sword and summons the wolf to fight him. In turn, the big bad wolf brandishes 2 scythes which cause Puss to be disarmed really quickly. The wolf soon turns out to be one of Puss's most difficult opponents as he is really fast. While fighting, the wolf even manages to cut Puss with his scythe. Sensing that he's now in danger, Puss uses his intelligence and agility to outsmart the wolf and dodge his scythe attacks. However, the wolf doesn't back down and keeps fighting. Soon enough, Puss first stands up, and his eyes widen. He realizes that this is his first experience with fear. Puss quickly flees the pub and realizes that he fears the wolf. This strange feeling causes him to hang up his boots for good. Heartbroken, Puss arranges a funeral for himself as if he were permanently deceased. The incident is a turning point for Puss as it shows that his carefree days of adventure are gone. He has to become more mature and subdued now. This whole new transition causes him to cry as he isn't used to the quiet life at all. Despite this, he buries his boots, hat, and cape before proceeding to his next destination. Puss finally arrives at Mama Luna's house as suggested by the doctor, and she readily takes him in. Puss is eventually introduced to her and her several cats of all shapes and sizes. Mama Luna takes Puss and him a bath. Not only that, she also gives him a new name, which is Pickles. Puss absolutely hates it, but he has no other choice. He is compelled to eat and drink from the same tray as all the other cats he considers to be filthy and uncivilized. When Puss tries to cook for himself, he gets shooed away by Mama Luna. His life is utterly miserable. At night he gets squished by the other cats while sleeping. Soon, days pass and Puss grows a beard. He then comes to terms with living as a house pet and eating cat food. Even then, Puss becomes more and more dissatisfied with his lifestyle. However, one day, he is approached by a small dog dressed as a cat. The dog has no name and seems to be very clingy. He starts to follow Puss everywhere as he's the only one who can speak. As the dog never leaves his side, Puss starts to refer to him as Perito. Puss is initially disgusted by Perito when he tells him to rub his belly. Perito claims to be Puss's therapy dog and follows him at all times. Eventually, Puss says that he wants to be left alone, but Perito just doesn't comply. The scene then shifts to Goldilocks and the 3 bears, which consists of Baby, Papa, and Mama. Even though they're bears, they consider Goldie as their own family. It appears as though this unusual family is on the lookout for something. However, it seems that they can't retrieve it without the assistance of Puss in Boots. Because of this, they all approach Mama Luna's house. They quickly break into the house and demand to know where Puss is. When Mama Luna doesn't answer, they start threatening her, which causes the old lady to faint. They then start examining Puss's photograph and look at all the cats there in order to find any sort of similarity. Just then, Baby picks up Puss, but Goldie doesn't recognize him as he has now grown a beard and doesn't even have his outfit on. A while later, Goldie's family ends up discovering Puss's grave. They're disheartened but decide to continue with their mission anyway. However, before they leave, Puss overhears them talking about how they require a skilled outlaw to steal a map. As it turns out, the map isn't ordinary. It shows the way to the wishing star. Unfortunately, the map happens to be in Big Jack Horner's hands. After hearing all this, Puss decides to return back to his heroics and go after the map himself. He wants to do all this just so he can use his wish to finally reclaim his other lives. Enthusiastic, Puss asks Perito to dig his grave. He then gets dressed in his trademark hat, boots, and cape. Perito asks to tag along, but Puss strictly refuses. He then transforms back into Puss in Boots and sets off on his next adventure. Moving forward, Puss gets inside Big Jack Horner's compound. He plans to sneak in and steal the map, but that's when he sees Perito right beside him, who insists on helping Puss. Puss hesitantly agrees and continues keeping an eye out for the map. It turns out that Jack had only gotten the map. As his servants bring the map, Jack enthusiastically instructs them to take it to the trophy room. Puss overhears this and swiftly enters the trophy room through a pipe. However, he is nearly burned by a fire-breathing phoenix. Once settled in, Puss notices that Jack is an avid collector of various magical artifacts from other fairy tales, such as Cinderella's glass slipper, poison apples, Alice in Wonderland's growing cookie, and so on. Jack then claims that he wants to use the map to find the wishing star and possess all the magic in the world. Just when Jack is distracted, Puss reaches for the map. However, he gets stopped by none other than his ex-girlfriend, Kitty Softpaws. Turns out that Kitty had previously been recruited for the job by Goldie and the bears. However, she was planning on going to double-cross them anyway. It seems that Kitty is particularly angry with Puss for a recent betrayal as well. While they're arguing, one of Jack's people requests gold as a reward. Jack initially agrees but then forces them to touch a golden hand. Instead of receiving gold, the servants transform into gold themselves. While Puss and Kitty are arguing with one another, Baby suddenly falls from the ceiling. Goldie and the other two bears quickly arrive as well, and Jack notices them. That's when Goldie demands that they hand over the map. However, just then, they turn around and see a massive shelf about to fall. Puss and Kitty take this opportunity to board a flying carpet and take off. Jack starts to chase them, but Puss and Kitty escape in a carriage driven by Perito in order to avoid Jack's goons. Jack then gathers all of his henchmen, along with the necessary magical artifacts to reclaim the map. When Puss sees Jack's men after him, he begins to throw multiple bags of gold in the middle of the street. This causes everyone to gather around and collect the gold. Puss is happy that his plan has worked. He has managed to evade Jack's goons. However, he is soon startled to see the wolf among the crowd. Puss gets really scared and starts fleeing once again. On the other hand, Jack starts packing his belongings and transforms a pumpkin into a carriage. He then begins following Puss and Kitty using a crystal ball to determine their location. While traveling, Puss and Kitty open the map and discover that they must travel through the dark forest. They quickly begin their journey. Puss, Kitty, and Perito finally stop running and enter the dark forest through a portal to continue their journey to the star. Sometime later, Puss asks Softpaws if he can hold the map, but she refuses. The two then get into a tussle and compete with puppy eyes. However, Perito gets affected by the cuteness and faints. The three of them finally open the map. That's when they discover that the map has the ability to change the environment depending on who is holding it. When Puss and Kitty grab it, their paths are doomed to be dark and dangerous. However, when Perito holds it, the path transforms into a happy rainbow land due to its positive nature and optimism. Because of this, the cats let him keep the map. Just when everything seems right, the three are forced to move faster. Goldie and the bears have also now arrived at the scene. In order to get to the star, the trio must pass through a pocket full of posies. It is essentially a field of giant flowers that attack Puss and Kitty. However, Perito's sniffing of the flowers with love makes them less vicious. Seeing this, Perito claims that the cats must stop and smell the roses. They need to admire what's in front of them to move forward. After a while, Goldie and the bears, as well as Jack and his henchmen, encounter the pixies. Since they have no idea how to approach the giant flowers, they get into a lot of trouble. Some of Jack's men are even eaten or eliminated. Goldie and the bears somehow manage to fight their way through. Disgruntled, Jack eventually summons his phoenix and commands it to expel fire everywhere. This causes the flowers to burn. Seeing that he has competition, he throws Goldie and the bears off the cliff. Meanwhile, the trio continues on, with Perito telling Puss and Kitty his backstory. It turns out that Perito's original family would always try to get rid of him, but he always kept coming back. As a last resort to get rid of him for good, they threw the poor dog in a sock with a stone into the river. They wanted Perito to drown, but thankfully, he survived. Despite all this, Perito is still happy and tries to find goodness in everything. On the other hand, Puss and Kitty are mortified by his tragic story. They start to sympathize with Perito and continue on their journey. After some time, Puss asks Kitty for help as his beard is itchy. Kitty understands and begins shaving Puss's beard while cruising down a river. She then gives Puss her small blade, because he had left his sword while fighting the wolf and was now using a stick. Puss is enthralled to have a new weapon and throws the stick far away. However, Perito goes after it as if it were a game of fetch. Perito eventually wanders away from the group and into a brightly colored forest, where Jack and his henchmen are waiting to kidnap him. Jack quickly pulls out a bow and a unicorn horn and threatens to shoot Perito in the face. In exchange for his life, he wants the map back. Just then, Goldie and the bears arrive and another fight breaks out. As the fight progresses, Jack's goons lose their lives once again when he hits them with unicorn horns. This causes them to burst into confetti. Meanwhile, Goldie and the bears steal the map from the trio during the battle and run away. On the other hand, Jack meets a talking cricket who tries to find the positive side of Jack. However, to his surprise, he cannot find even an ounce of goodness within Horner. While Puss is busy pursuing the bears, he hears the wolf's whistle once again. Scared, he turns around to see the same wolf waiting for him. Puss quickly runs away as the environment darkens. He is afraid that the wolf is following him. Perito, on the other hand, locates Puss and attempts to console him. Seeing this, Kitty is really perplexed. Just then, Goldie ends up taking the map. Since she doesn't share Perito's optimism, the environment changes once more. After a while, Puss timidly admits to Perito that he needs the wish to save his life. He also tells Perito that years ago, he had left Kitty at the altar on their wedding day. He was just too independent and thought that there was no room for anyone else in his life of adventure. However, as time passed, he began regretting his decision since he really loved her. Kitty overhears Puss regret hurting her and eventually decides to assist him in getting back on his feet. On the other hand, when Goldie pulls out the map, she and the bears are led to their old cottage. It was the same place where Papa and Mama had first discovered Goldie after she sneaked in. Goldie had never had a real family because she was an orphan. However, that was only true until the bears took her in. When they finally enter the cottage, Goldie notices that it's actually the map playing a trick on them by displaying all of their favorite things. Meanwhile, the trio also sneaks into the cottage. Once inside, Puss successfully reverses the map. Unfortunately, this causes the team to be discovered by the bears. The trio then attempts to flee, but that's when Goldie captures Perito as a hostage. Meanwhile, Puss quickly grabs the map and opens it, which causes him to be trapped inside a massive crystal cave. Puss then shows Kitty the map so she can find Perito while he tries to get out of the crystals. Meanwhile, the various crystals in the cave begin to transform into Puss and display what he was like during his 8 lives. The other 8 Puss in Boots begin to sing, while the current one joins them. That's when Puss realizes he had spent his entire life alone. Soon enough, the other 8 begin to mock him, pointing out that his new name is Pickles. They start laughing at him because he is best friends with a dog. On the other hand, Perito sits and watches Goldie and Baby argue and exchange insults. He enjoys the insults they throw at each other. After a while, he joins in and starts insulting them as well. Once he's done having fun, he tells them that they have the perfect family. Perito then says that he's always wished for a family like theirs. This makes Goldie really emotional, but she quickly composes herself. He then says that Goldie has won the orphan lottery. As the bears develop feelings for Perito, Kitty manages to swipe him and flee. Goldie and the bears get lost while trying to find their way back, resulting in an argument in which Goldie expresses her desire for a real family. She wants a human family rather than a bunch of bears. When the bears hear this, it breaks their hearts. But even then, Mama promises to make sure Goldie gets her to wish if it's the only thing that will make her happy. On the other hand, Jack is still adamant about getting his wish. Desperate, he tries to get his cart across. He uses his remaining henchmen as a human bridge to the next stop. However, this causes all but one of them to fall to their eternal sleep. The cricket soon realizes that Jack is indeed a horrible person when he gets flicked off of the man's shoulder. On the other hand, Puss realizes that he was nothing but cocky and arrogant in his previous 8 lives. He goes on to learn that he is actually very content with Kitty and Perito. However, his epiphany is cut short when the wolf appears once again. The wolf finally tells Puss that he has attended all his previous passings. It turns out that the wolf is the embodiment of death himself and not a mere bounty hunter. The wolf then says that he's here to collect Puss's soul. He wants to bring Puss in Boots to rest. The wolf eventually tells Puss that he dislikes cats because they have 9 lives, which he finds absurd. Since Puss never valued any of his lives, he has come to take the last one now. The wolf is angry because Puss never really loved his life. He used it all his life as a game and never understood its true meaning of it. After realizing that he's face to face with death himself, Puss flees in terror once more, this time pursued by the wolf. Puss keeps running, and that's when he hears Kitty and Perito calling for him. However, he ignores them and keeps running to find the star. Puss finally arrives at the location of the star and begins to recite the incantation which will grant him his wish. Kitty and Perito arrive just then, with Kitty suspecting Puss of betraying her once more. She is heartbroken because previously they had planned to share the wish. Puss quickly tries to explain that eternal sleep is on his way. However, Kitty and Perito are confused because they're not the ones getting chased by eternal sleep. Just then, Goldie and the bears, as well as Jack and his henchmen, arrive. During their struggle for the map, the star rises from the ground and creates a force field that spits everyone out. Jack's henchman is about to be sucked out. Baby is nearly pulled up with him, but Goldie saves him. She lets go of her chance at the wish in order to save Baby, realizing that the bears are her true family. Meanwhile, Kitty has also started to love Perito. Thus, she knocks Jack into his bottomless bag just to save her friend. While Kitty, Goldie, and Jack fight amongst one another, the wolf reappears and traps Puss in a fire ring. He starts mocking Puss's fear of eternal sleep, saying that he would be a coward if he used his wish to cheat eternal sleep. This makes Puss muster up all the courage he has. He starts looking back on his time with Kitty and Perito. That's when Puss realizes that he has everything he wants right here with him. If eternal sleep wants to take him away, then so be it. Eventually, Puss decides that he wants to make his last life count. He realizes that he's already lived his life to the fullest and running like a coward now won't do him any good. He picks up his sword and proceeds to fight the wolf. Puss manages to disarm the wolf after a fierce battle. However, this just makes the wolf enraged because he had hoped to see Puss as a reckless hero who had no regard for eternal sleep. When he sees that Puss has finally learned the true meaning of life, he decides that another time will come for him to see the infamous Puss in Boots. The wolf finally departs. However, just then, Jack emerges from his bag. He has consumed the growing cookie which has made him gigantic. Due to his size, he takes the map quite easily and begins to make his wish. Suddenly, Perito attempts to distract him by making cute puppy eyes after Kitty had previously taught him the technique. Unfortunately, it doesn't work for Jack because he has no feelings at all. Even then, this little act buys Goldie enough time to throw Puss and Kitty at Jack while the bears join in on the fight. Puss, Kitty, and Goldie tear the map apart, which causes the star to malfunction. Desperate, Jack tries to reassemble the map but seems to be missing one. It turns out that the last piece is in the hands of the cricket, who burns it and completely destroys the map along with Jack's phoenix. Eventually, the star completely disintegrates and absorbs Jack before exploding back into the sky. After having learned the true essence of life, Goldie and the bears part ways with Puss and his pals. Goldie realizes that she already has a loving family and walks away with them. Meanwhile, Perito decides to keep his name as he is happy to call Puss and Kitty his new family. The three then plan on going on more adventures soon. At one point, they all sit together and gaze at the stars. In the end, when everything is over, Delmar's governor decides to take a vacation, only to realize that his boat has been stolen. He's enraged but knows exactly who did it. It's none other than Team Friendship, which consists of Puss, Kitty, and Perito. They have already set sail for new adventures. Not just that, Puss intends to see some of his old friends as well. The scene finally shifts over to far, far away, probably so that Puss can pay a visit to his green ogre friend.